Hi, everyone. I'm Kara Weiss. I'm an engagement manager here at Conte. I have been in the Salesforce Pardot atmosphere for 6+ years. I am 2 times Pardot certified and I have 10 years of experience in marketing ops and digital marketing.
Welcome, Kara. Hi there, I am Katie Heggie. I'm a front-end developer here at Conte. And I've been in the digital marketing space for right around 20 years, experienced both B2B and B2C. And I have 16 plus years working in the Salesforce ecosystem.
All right, so today we're going to kick off with why accessibility matters. Why is it important? We're going to review the Americans with Disabilities Act so you understand the legal ramifications. We're going to do accessibility and digital marketing applied. So Katie's going to walk you through how to actually enable these things and tips for developing for accessibility. So making sure that you're keeping up to date with everything that needs to happen. Why accessibility matters. Right off the bat, more than 1 billion people have some form of a disability. 36 million of the world's workforce is disabled. In the US, that's 1 in 4 adults have a disability. And this is so important to me because I am one of those 4. I'm one of those 36 million, and I'm one of that 15% of the population. I do have a 1 blind eye and 1 partially blind eye. So I'm very dependent on my assistive devices. There are multiple functional disability types. Today, we are going to be focusing on vision within digital marketing, but this also includes mobility, cognition, independent living, hearing, and self-care. So of the 43 million struggling with visual impairment that they use assistance when they're online. These can include screen readers, magnifiers, or navigation assistants. Screen readers actually read the content right off the screen for the individual. Magnifiers zoom in on a specific piece of text and enlarge it for them to read. And navigation assistants know where to click, point out URLs, and help them move from page to page while online or reading their email. So at the end of the day, accessibility matters because you want to meet the need of every customer and you want to sell, right? If I personally get an email that I can't read, that I have to enlarge or I have to put work into it, those emails usually get deleted. So you're losing potential customers. Furthermore, when I go to a website that's not accessible, that I can't navigate easily, again, I'm going to jump off. You're losing potential customers. That 43 million is a big number. The Americans with Disabilities Act is a law within the US. Every country kind of has their own sets of standards, but I am going to focus on the US law. And this law covers anybody with a disability to protect them. So it goes beyond just protecting them in the workforce, but at home and now online. So this is the law itself. Discrimination against individuals with disabilities persists in such critical areas as employment, housing, public accommodations, education, transportation, communication, recreation, institutionalization, health services, voting, and access to public services. I will highlight here the communication. Communication now falls under digital media. This includes websites, emails, landing pages, any form of being on a computer now falls under that communication piece within the ADA, meaning that you have to accommodate your website, or you can, in fact, face legal ramifications. Such organizations that have encountered legal ramifications, you might know of them: Amazon, Burger King, There are some very well-known organizations that are getting hit with very large lawsuits for not accommodating. I will share this slide deck with you. This WCAG provides you guidelines. This is a worldwide guideline list, so it does cover the ADA within the US. On this list, you are going to find perceivable. Perceivable are must. You have to incorporate these into your digital marketing efforts in order to be within code of the ADA. The should list are high recommendations. Think of the should list as people like me that might delete your email or skip your website because I can't read it and it's not legible for me. You're going to be losing customers for that reason. And the may want to list are really like nice to have things. So to be fully accommodating, it would be great if you did this, this, and that. I am going to go ahead and hand it over to Katie now to talk about different items that you can enable.
Oh, thank you, Kara. So we want to talk about color contrasts and how we can do that on a day-to-day basis. It's certainly easier to read things when, you know, that blue on blue with the color blindness and the have a dark to light ratio is a better. You want to avoid, you know, having hard to read text on inside of any digital media. You want to try to use a 20-point font or a 20 pixel font when you're going digital, and try to avoid smaller things that make you squint or, quite frankly, give me a headache. I don't know about you, Kara, but it does. It gives me a headache if I have to squint and try to bring up my, you know, my Zoom. So if we can make that, and it's space out that line height when we're talking about making a paragraph, just space it out easily so your eye can not get tired.
And I will add that the 16-point font is the ADA recommended font, so the minimum size that you should go with.
Cool. Did you want to talk a little bit about this image as well, Kara?
I sure do.
This has more to do with you.
Yes. So include key messaging in the body copy as text. So when you're using screen readers, if this text is actually part of the image, so it's all one JPEG or one PNG file, a screen reader is not going to read this text. The screen reader sees this as an image and will overlook it. So you will likely not have a customer fully understand your product. Instead, we encourage you to lay text over an image using HTML or CSS. That way, the screen readers and navigators can, oh, that is text. I need to read that for them. Also, you'll notice that the text is above on the sky rather than on the mountains. This is because the text is legible on the blue sky. When you move it onto dark on dark, you're not going to be able to read it any longer.
Okay, so when she just talked about how you have an image and you may want to put some sort of message on top of that, but what if your image doesn't show? What if someone has their images turned off on their email? We want to make sure that you know, you can populate a message, or they can't actually see an image, but you want to make sure that the screen reader can read the alt text. This is an example of putting something engaging that if they can't see the image, well, your screen reader is going to read what they can't see. I've actually had some experience of not having alt text in an email. And one of the things that you should note is that not having alt text could result in your email getting caught in a spam filter. I've literally banged my head against the wall for like a full day trying to figure out why I couldn't get an email into an inbox when it was my own company. It was a newsletter. And come to find out, I had a couple of images that were part of that newsletter that didn't have an alt text. And as soon as I added that in, boom, it came right on through. So keep that in mind when you're actually creating your emails. We just talked about how your email clients may not have your images turned on. This will allow you to have that screen reader read that. And this is one of those must-do things that Kara mentioned earlier as being compliant. So we want to make sure that's also on there because of that reason. So a couple of tips that we have put together here are just having a visual hierarchy. You have your H1 tag, which is your first header, all the way down to having your text be left aligned. And these are kind of nice to haves, and it's kind of a mix of nice to have and must haves, right? You want to make sure that you're highlighting your most important text for that text reader with an H1 tag. The plain text, is that the plain text option for your, instead of an HTML option?
Correct.
Awesome.
Mhm.
So we want to have that as a required in some of your email platforms like Marketing Cloud and engagement for Pardot. So you have accessible links. I loathe looking at emails that are just one giant paragraph and just a run on of words over words. And I can't stress enough that you have just a second, like just a few seconds for someone to scan an email to even know if it's worth reading. And if you break that up into some bullets, you give it some nice spacing, you put it in sections or code blocks, you're going to have a way more readability, and you'll have someone actually reading it all the way to the end versus just having it all jumbled together. There is a such thing, I know it's crazy, but there is a such thing as emoji overload, having things flash, having the bright high contrast can give, would you say someone a headache, Kara?
Not only does it give you a headache, but actually if people with seizure disorders, that can be too much for them and actually cause a seizure. So there's multiple factors in this, but yes, I can tell you that as someone with only 75% vision in one eye and 0 in the other eye, that flashing hurts me. Like it's painful. So I actually skip anything that has a flashing emoji or different image.
Got it. And then I will add that the large size GIFs that people put inside of an email, when you have that text to image ratio, it makes it slower to load. It can get caught in your spam filters. And quite honestly, if it doesn't even load, then you're missing out on what you're trying to actually accomplish with an email, which is communicate. So I've I'm going to stop sharing. Well, I won't stop sharing. I will escape out of this slide deck and kind of bring up some of these tool tips that I found pretty cool when I'm trying to gauge whether or not a website is hitting all the points, right? So we want to make sure that our websites, if we're creating them, are hitting all the points. And then we'll just, I don't know, we'll just throw in Sercante in here. If I scroll all the way down, I'm looking at accessibility.com, and I'm just going to see, I'm going to give myself an audit. I want to see if I'm missing any of my key points here. And I want to also add that we're all a work in progress, right? So we all want to run these tests occasionally, and we want to make sure that we're hitting all the things that we want to. Actually, it's a pretty good score. We got a 92. But it literally gives you kind of a checkbox. Are you doing all your titles? And it gives you all these little cool tips of what you could be doing better on your website. Here we talked about hierarchy earlier. I need to go back through and maybe, clean up some of these hierarchies. So we want to make sure that things are the way they should. So yeah, run your stuff through a little accessibility or accessibility.com. Give yourself a quick test and see how you're running, how your website's doing. Let me go back to my slide deck, but my Zoom is covering it. Let's share. I'm just going to stop doing it that way and do it this way. All right, cool. So we talked about just doing a quick test. Are you doing it? Also, right off the bat, like if you have a brand guideline, make sure your brand guideline is actually being created with dark mode in mind, because more and more we're just having, you have a brand, like your brand might be this dark purple, and how does it render when you start to put some highlight colors on there? Are you going to use that? At what point is it still compliant before you have to flip over to a dark text? So I put together a material.o link where I think it can help you stay compliant and accessible, and just have a great tool to help you create your brand guideline. I also want to kind of give my own eyes a rest. How can I do that? Well, for those websites that don't have a native dark mode feature, there are apps like this Dark Reader, which is available for Chrome and Firefox. And unlike most dark themed extensions that created a custom dark mode for individual websites, Dark Reader creates a dark theme from sites you visit without having to install custom styles or themes. And then I like it because I can literally turn it on, and we'll look at this web accessibility, and I'll just flip it on. So it's just a little app that you can plug in with your Chrome extension, and I can see how this actual website, by flipping it on, it'll come on, and now you can see that this website is in a dark mode, or at least a dark theme, not necessarily a dark mode. And I can give my own eyes a rest if someone isn't, if it's too bright for me. Cool. I love tips and tricks. Well, you don't even have to do that. Like if you're building out some landing pages, it's really kind of cool that you can do your own coding in a dark mode, and keep in dark mode, dark and light mode in mind, right? So it's pretty simple when planning for it right from the beginning. Have your designer go ahead and give you both modes, and then you can code it out, right? So I've created a quick landing page here where it's in dark mode or light mode. And you can see that, you know, your logo is different in dark mode and light mode. Your button colors are different, and all these are just controlled by a script and some, you know, some CSS classes that flip it from what do you want my buttons to be in dark mode? What do I want my buttons to be in light mode? And vice versa with the text and some images too. Just pretty simple. And giving them that button at the top, which is kind of key. So the bane of my existence is always coding for emails in dark mode. And I've been that person where I've been up against the wire trying to do some dark mode emails. And there's a couple of different things that come to mind, like how will my logo render? How will my background image with the text overlay render? How, if it's a color block, how can I get that color block to, with the text on top of that, to stay? So I've built out a kind of an all thing email, and I'll show you here in a couple minutes. But one of the first things that comes to mind is like the number one ask from us is, I want my logo to show up in dark mode and light mode, and I want it to look right. Well, there are a couple of options here. One is just not do anything and make sure that when someone's branding your logo, how will it render in dark and light mode? Well, this kind of does the trick, but not really, because that by Sercante is still in purple and it's dark on dark. You can put a border around it. I mean, that does the trick, and it renders on all the platforms the right way, and you're staying compliant within your own guidelines, your brand guidelines. But still, it's not quite what we want. You could put a stroke on there, like just put a little border around everything on your logo, which may give your creative designer a stroke, himself or herself, because, hey, that's not my logo. I don't want a stroke on there. What are you doing? Well, we can still do something like this in dark and light mode with logos. You can literally put a class on here that, and then throw in a little bit of code for the meta description to say, I want it to be in dark mode, and I can put a class on here. And when it goes to dark mode, I want to serve up this logo. And on all the other ones, it's just going to be our regular logo. So when we adjust colors for our brand's preferred dark mode theme, what are we doing? We enable dark mode for subscribers that have dark mode turned on. So if they don't turn it on, we can add a dark mode styles, or if they do turn it on, we can add a dark mode styles that say at media prefers color scheme dark. So, and then we can code around that. So, I won't go into too much detail about coding because I don't want people to get glazed over, but I will definitely give you some examples that you can take with you, and some links with deeper tutorials on how we do this. We want to support dark mode styles in Outlook app by adding another prefix called data, OGSC prefix. And then we're going to add a class called dark mode. And then that way we can really write styles that target your fonts, your images. We just showed you an example of that image flipping back and forth. And by adding dark mode as a class, we can say, okay, every time there's a class called dark mode, when someone has that color scheme turned on to dark and my email flips to dark mode, I want to serve up this logo. You can do that with your social icons at the bottom of your emails as well. And any image, like if your image isn't, won't go through as a, if it doesn't flip over nicely when it goes to dark mode. So I wanted to bring up a point because this is a really big stick in my side, a pain in my side when I do background images and have text on top. Background images with text on top in dark mode is not impossible, but it is a pain when it comes to Outlook. And then you can do some kind of wizardry, I like to call it, when you're just by adding a CSS class or a style to your body. And if your body color is dark and your image on top is a lighter image, we can actually add some fill colors to make your text. So it's kind of taking a blend of this and making your text a dark color. And then I wrote, this is super, I don't like I said, I just don't want to get too caught in the weeds about how to code this, but there are some great reference tutorials here about how to do that if someone else is having that same problem. And that was all the tips I had. So I guess we want to talk about some upcoming events with Sercante. We have some, you can watch some of our previous, we're starting this ungated sessions, which are just the free webinars that Sercante offers. And here are the ones that we've done in the past. Currently, I don't know if we have any in the can right now that are coming up, but you could certainly go back and watch some of our previous ungated sessions. And if you want to level up with Pardot and Salesforce training courses, we do offer a 6-week training course in Pardot Admin Bootcamp, Code School for Pardot, Salesforce Basics for Marketers, as well as offering mini series workshops and some private training. So we left a link here that you can reference to sign up for any of those coming up. And I think someone asked earlier, coming back to the any questions is, can I get a copy of that dark light mode landing page? Absolutely. We're going to offer that up. I'll give you a link to that. And as well, I think Kara mentioned that we'll go ahead and give you guys the slide deck. So I'll go ahead and wrap all this, zip it up and send it to everyone that attended the webinar. And I want to thank you guys for joining us today. Brendan, do you have anything else?
No, I think that's everything. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.